Hey, it's the preacher, and today we're going to make sauerkraut. Now, sauerkraut is one of those things you either love it or you hate it. You say, well, preacher, I don't love it. It's okay. Well, if you think it's okay, you've never had homemade. If you're eating what you get out of a can or a jar, that sauerkraut is okay. If you make your own sauerkraut, it's completely and totally different. Because you can control how tangy it gets, you can control how soft it gets, or how much crunch you still have in it. So everything you need to make sauerkraut is on this table. Now obviously you can get more fancy than this, you can get more elaborate than this, but you're going to need cabbage, you're going to need salt, you're going to need something to put it in for it to ferment, and then you're going to need a sharp knife and a place to cut it up. So I can't find my charger, so I don't know how long my battery's going to last. I think I left it at the office. But what I want to do today is I want to show you my process for making sauerkraut. And I have got a Bluebird number 3 crock here. Now when you see a crock and it has a number on it, that number is how many gallons the crock will hold. You don't have to have a crock. I've made these in half-gallon pickle jars. I've made kraut in any kind of jar. All you need is salt and cabbage. But I want to make a bunch. I want to divide it up and can it. The last time I made kraut, I gave away a bunch of it, and everybody was like, hey, make us another round of kraut. We're out. So this time I'm going to make enough kraut that I don't have to make any for a while. So I have 8 heads of cabbage. I have some sea salt or kosher salt, either one. You don't want to use iodized salt because that somehow can inhibit the fermentation process of the cabbage. So basically all I'm going to do is quarter and core all of these heads of cabbage, and then I'm going to cut them into wedges. And the reason I'm going to cut them into wedges is because I need to either grate them or slice them. Now you can with a sharp knife, after you core them, just sit here and thinly slice it, and I've done that before. You can also take what they call a mandolin, which is a slicer on a rack, and you can sit there and run it and slice it very thin that way. I'm going to use a food processor. And then once you get this stuff sliced, you're going to need to be adding salt. And I'll give you the ratios and show you how, but you need to knead that salt, mash that salt, and break some of the fibers in the cabbage in order to get this to fully break down. So we don't add water, we don't add vinegar, it's just cabbage and salt and something for it to ferment in. And whatever you choose to ferment it in, you've got to put a weight on top to push the cabbage down and keep it under its own juices so air doesn't get to it. And there should be enough juice in this cabbage to do that. If there's not, we'll add just a little bit of water. Anyways, I'll show you parts of the process. When we get done, I'll show you the cabbage fermenting. I'll probably just go ahead and do a video. And then maybe I'll show you canning the sauerkraut in a couple weeks or a month, depending on how long it takes to ferment. Anyways, follow along. Let's talk about something important. Everything I talk about is important. You need to get your salt to cabbage ratio right. And the first time I did any kind of fermenting, I did it all wrong. I just thought, hey, salt's good, salt's a preservative, I'll just keep adding salt. And I was going to make some Louisiana style hot sauce. And you ferment those little Tabasco peppers. It's going to make some Tabasco sauce. You ferment them in salt. And I put too much salt in there. And if you put too much salt in your cabbage or your sauerkraut, what will end up happening is you will get so much salt that it actually kills the fermentation process and the good bacterias or enzymes or whatever that stuff is that I don't know how that works. But you can't put too much salt in it. So what you're going to do is put around 3 tablespoons per 5 pounds. I have almost 10 pounds of cabbage here. I weighed it on a little set of scales. So what I'm going to need then is 3 tablespoons per 5 pounds. So I'm going to need 6 tablespoons. And I'm going to go ahead and measure that out and put it in this cup. And I'm going to set it aside. I don't know exactly how much cabbage I'm going to get in that 3-gallon crock. And so I'm going to do about half of it. And then I'm going to see how much will fit in there. And I know it'll hold more than this. But I want to get it mixed and get the cabbage and the salt incorporated together and get it packed down in the crock. And then I'll decide how many more heads of cabbage I want to add to that. I did 3 heads the first time, and I came up with 9 pounds, 8 ounces, almost 10 pounds. So I'm going to do that, and then I may add another 5 pounds, or I may do another 6. I don't know. We'll see how much it takes up. I may do it all. I wanted to make some coleslaw today too, since I had all this cabbage. But we'll see. So anyways, all I'm going to do is I'm going to measure 6 tablespoons for 10 pounds. 3 tablespoons for 5 pounds. Hey, math wizards, how many tablespoons for 2.6859 pounds? I think that's 4. 5. 6. Ooh. Okay, that's all the salt I need to make 5 pounds or 10 pounds of kraut. Now what I need to do, I've just cut this in quarters and then I've sliced it. So I have these big steak size, and the reason I did this is so it will fit in the top of my food processor. And I'm going to get that set up, and I will start grating it and dumping it into the crock. Okay, here's the last batch of cabbage I've run through the food processor. I'm still working on that initial 9 pounds of cabbage. I've done this about 5 times now, and every time that I've come over here, I've kind of tried to rake out some of the pieces, get them in here. I haven't always raked out the hopper like this. I don't think this is called a hopper. I don't know what you call it. But every time I've done that, I've sprinkled a little bit of our salt. And this is the last of it. Now that looks like, you know, 9 pounds of cabbage fills the whole thing. But what we want to do now is work this cabbage down. And there's really not going to be any good way of me showing you how to do that, other than you can see I'm kind of reaching to the bottom and pushing down. And what we're trying to do is get that salt to come in contact with all of the pieces of cabbage so that it starts drawing the moisture out. And by drawing the moisture out, the cabbage itself will break down, become soft and sink, and we want the juices of the cabbage to eventually cover the cabbage. And so as you can quickly see by pushing and working on it, I'm 2/3 of the way full now, whereas I was full when I started. And I'm going to keep doing this and working this until we draw that moisture out and get it covered. It may take me 15 minutes, so after I work on it a little bit, I will turn the camera back on and show you what it looks like. I think you can see that. When we were just dumping the cabbage in here and sprinkling a little salt on it and and chopping it and dumping it, we were almost full. And I've kneaded on that for about, by kneading I mean I'm pushing it down with my fist, I'm rolling it over, pushing it back down, and just mixing it and packing it. And I did that for maybe 3 or 4 or 5 minutes, and you can see where we are. And if I start pushing my finger, you can see liquid just under the surface of that cabbage. And that salt will continue to draw that liquid out. And so as that sits, more and more liquid will come out of the cabbage. And this is just within the first 5 minutes or so of stirring it around. So that will continue to draw liquid out, and we'll continue to press the cabbage down. I put 10 pounds in here. I'm going to put another 5. You don't want this full to the top because this is going to give off a gas. It's going to ferment. And by ferment, it's going to give off a gas, and that's going to cause it to expand. So I think another 5 pounds should get me somewhere maybe 2/3 up the side and then a weight on top. And I'll go with that. So I'm going to cut up 5 more pounds of cabbage. I'll turn the camera back on when I'm putting the weight on it. Get this back here where you can see it. Okay, so there you have it. I started out, I showed you what it looked like with 9 pounds of cabbage in it. I added 5 more pounds, of course 3 more tablespoons of salt, and it's already starting to ferment and rise up, and I can push the cabbage down, and you can see I haven't added any water. This is just water coming out of the cabbage itself. That's what the salt does. Salt draws it out. Now what we need to do is find a weight to put in here to keep that pushed down. I've got a lid that fits in there just perfectly. And then I need a weight, so I just took an empty mayonnaise jar, filled it full of water for weight, and that will hold the cabbage down under the water line. That'll also allow the gas bubbles to rise up out of there so that my crock don't crack. You never want to seal these up tight. If you're doing this in a jar, you don't want to put a lid on it, at least not tight. Anyways, if you want, you could drape cheesecloth over the top. But I'm going to let this go for probably 2 weeks, and I can take the lid out at any time and try a little bit and see how I like it. And once it gets to the point where you are happy with it, then you can take it out and can it. So anyways, there's the process for making slaw. And while you're doing it, I recommend you go out and make yourself some curtido. I think that's how you say it. It's like a South American coleslaw. It's cabbage, onions, carrots, jalapenos, and a little salt, vinegar, and water, some oregano. And you can make this up, and since I was doing all this, that's what I did. I made up 3 quarts of that and put those in the fridge. And I'll give a couple of those away as gifts. Anyways, thank you guys for watching. Try to make your own slaw. See how it turns out. Let me know. If I did something wrong and you're a kraut expert, by all means, let me know. Oh, like, what's it called?